This is a really special episode for me and one that has been an idea of mine for so many years now. I am joined by Mrs. Manning, who was one of my high school teachers, and as I like to say, my angel in high school that really helped save my life in a lot of ways. How are you, Miss Manning? Mrs.
I
Manning?
I'm doing fabulous. I am so happy to get to sit here and chat with you today. And you are too kind. I just happen to be somebody who was able to be in the right place at the right time. So I'm glad that you think of me that way, but you might be a little too generous.
No, I am not. I often connect you to, have you seen the movie Matilda?
Of course.
You were Matilda's teacher for me. You were that person in my life when I was going through
Oh,
high school.
a Mrs. Honey. I love that.
Yes.
That's
You
quite an
know,
honor.
it is. And you are very special in that way, not just because you were an incredible human being, but Mrs. Manning was a safe space for me when I was going through a really horrible bullying situation in high school. These were girls who I had once upon a time thought were my friends, and that quickly changed. And I didn't like being at school. It was a really dark time for me. So we're going to pull on some past memories here, though, Mrs. Manning. We're going to see if you recall things in kind of a similar way for me. But from your experience as a teacher, now at this time, we're going to kind of walk this back a little bit. At this time, you were a math teacher, which was ironic because it was my most horrible subject, and I still to this day am not good at math.
Stop that. Stop that. I want to know, can you still remember the distance formula song?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay, now my heart's broken. Ugh.
And it was never a reflection of you as a teacher. I just was never good at math. And you know this. You know this because not only did I spend a lot of time post all of this happening, but pre, I was in there getting tutored often because I was so bad at math.
You have to quit this. You had straight A's in every class you ever took, ever. Like truly a real straight A all 4 years of high school. So you may not have liked it, but you were definitely better than you think.
Okay, well, I'll try and start changing my narrative on that, but it it
Okay,
it was
okay.
rough for me. But from your experience at this time, and we'll get to like the career change that happened later, but when you were a math teacher and you had your student who you know was going through something and became this like safe haven classroom for you, what was that experience like for you?
Being in the classroom is so unique because you've got 25 different stories that are sitting right there in front of you. And if you take the time to really get to know each one of them, like what a privilege to get to be a part of that small piece of that story and hopefully get to be a bright spot in somebody's day. You, girlfriend, you had a lot going on. Um, and a lot of people may not see that on the outside. You obviously are beautiful and always have been. Um, but you had these leadership positions and you were involved and you were athletic and you were smart. Uh, but all of those things are great. They don't necessarily shield us or protect us from some of the ugliness that's in the world. And so, if you take the time to see what's really going on underneath the surface, it's pretty special if you can try to do something to help make that a better experience for somebody.
Yeah, and you not only were this safe space in the school, when the bullying situation was happening for me, there was often being rumors spread about me on multiple levels. And the reason I would often find a safe haven in your classroom, it was because I didn't want to be around people as the classes were changing and getting looked at, as a kid who's 16, 17 years old. I didn't want to be around 300 people who seemed to think that there was all these horrible things happening in my life and none of them were true, but I couldn't do anything about it. And so
Yeah.
being able to come to your classroom just between pretty much every, I guess I don't know what they're called anymore, but every single break in between classes, I was just like running. I would even be across the other like entire end of the school and come there for a few minutes and then run back to the other side because it was just that safe place for me. How did you like manage that? Were you like, do I need to do something about this or do I just need to let her keep doing this until because I don't know that you knew a lot of the stuff that was happening until it kind of progressed further. What was that for you where you were like, how do I navigate this situation and still make her feel safe?
Sure. Um, you're right. I kind of came into it late. So I don't know if you remember, but shocker to the people who know me, I don't have a lot of background in cheerleading. Um, it was absolutely not my wheelhouse, but I kind of got to step in and kind of help finish out a season. And that is one of the ways I got to learn a little bit more about what was going on kind of with you. Um, and just wow, just wow. Truly, that I can attribute that one experience to why I went back to school and I decided to get a degree in counseling instead of administration. Um, because I looked at what was happening within this group of girls and the power struggle and the bullying that's not what a lot of people think of as bullying, but that true relational aggression that happened. And I went, I'm not prepared to deal with this. I need to, if there's somewhere I can make a difference and try to do better by my students, this is something I need to learn more about. So, yeah, coaching cheer for me was a real catalyst that shot me into this new career path. Um, and I'm grateful that I was there and I'm glad that I could help you. I would never do it again. No chance.
Yeah,
Um,
to give you guys some more context, so the bullying that happened in my situation was some girls that I was friends with, and we had all cheered together. This was my senior year of high school, so people I'd gone through my entire high school career with, and I thought we were all friends. And then it was kind of like I woke up one day and they said horrible things about them. One that still is very ingrained into my brain is the I hope she falls on her face and dies. And as a cheerleader who was a flyer and had to trust the people below me with my life, and I'm 16, 17, hormonal girl, that's the last thing you want to hear. And not only that, that was just the beginning. Then it spun and spiraled in multiple different directions. But then Mrs. Manning came in as one of our coaches because one of the coaches was involved in the things that were happening to me because she had somebody on our team that she felt was better suited for my role. And it became kind of this whole nightmare of a scenario with adults and other kids involved. And that's when Mrs. Manning came in, took the coaching role, and she was like, what am I doing? What is happening here? And you got thrown into a fire, not only of a sport that you were unfamiliar with, but of a whole situation that was never handled because, I got really lucky. I say that very sarcastically, that my experience was a first for the school and what I was dealing with and what was happening in that capacity. Now, unfortunately, like my sister, who was 2 years older than me, had a similar experience with girls in high school, but they were just different variations, different versions. There wasn't a lot of talk. There wasn't a lot of like, do better with your mental health and understand your feelings and talk to people or talk to somebody. None of that was the case. So not only did you get thrown in multiple levels, but you also got thrown into a situation that was ill-equipped to handle any type of situation like that.
well, and complicate matters even further, the cyberbullying was all pretty fresh. I mean, it was new. We haven't had a lot of experience with it at the time. And so, even Kansas law at the time was fairly unclear about what you could do as far as consequences within the school day. So, nobody doubted that some things were happening. It was just a matter of are these things that the school can actually act on? And I'm grateful to say that Kansas law has come around and you've got a little more leeway there where if those types of things are affecting the school day and preventing students from being able to access their education, administration has more power to step in and a responsibility even to intervene. Whereas before it was really predicated on, well, did this happen outside of the school day? What's the timestamp? Well, did it happen at school? Was it on a school, device or school computer? Um, And it was just so frustrating because let's be honest, bullies know what they're doing. Okay. They are smart, they are intentional about it. Um, that power struggle, especially among girls, that relational aggression that I mentioned earlier, it can look so many different ways, but it is all intentional and it is covert. So you really have to be looking to see it if you're somebody on the outside. And that was kind of my goal, I guess, in all of this was just to have eyes wide open and try to take in everything and see everything, and try to make that a little bit safer space for everybody.
And you did, and that's why I felt so much comfort in being able to just spend time in your classroom as a lot of this was happening. And to your point of, if there are people who are experiencing bullies and gosh, I wish there was a right way to handle any of it. It's all so based on a situation and how many factors are involved. There was a particular thing that I definitely do not suggest for any school administration, teacher, anything that was listening. And I cannot remember if you had gotten involved at this point, Miss Manning, but they had put me in the girl who had been saying most of the bad things about me and these topics of conversation in the same room and said, you guys should talk about this. And
Mm,
our entire group or squad, I guess you could say, was also in that room. So it wasn't just her and I. It was everybody in a
mm.
room and said, you guys should sort this out. And I remember looking her in the eyes and I just said, why do you keep saying these things about me? Because I didn't know what else to say. I didn't, you're sitting here telling me to talk to the person who's basically, in my eyes, at that point, ruined my life and say, what did I do to deserve this? Which nobody should ever have to do. And she just looked at me and just said, I don't like you. There was no reason. There was no, this happened and this is why I feel this way and we can work on this. There was nothing I could have done to change anything. It was just, I don't like you.
Yeah, I don't think I was involved at that point. I'm curious, was there an adult in the room?
Yeah, I believe so. It was one of our higher administration at that point.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
And yeah,
Uh,
and I don't, like I said, I don't think you had gotten there yet at that point, but that is when a lot of bad things happen after that. Because when you put somebody who's been in a victim position and then the bully in the same position, and all you're doing is making that victim feel more vulnerable, what do you think is the outcome? It's just going to be worse. There's going to be more horrible things to happen. And so while I can sit here and say I don't know the right way to handle it, which is why I brought on an expert of someone who is now a counselor, and that's why I want to shift that gear to that. But I can say that is definitely not the right way to ever approach a situation with a bully and somebody who's been bullied. So, all that to say,
well, I'm really sorry to hear that that happened the way it did. I think that schools have come a long ways. Society's come a long ways. I mean, we can talk about mental health now, and it is not a taboo subject like it used to be. Sure, there are a lot of families who still kind of have that ingrained that, you keep these things to yourself, you bottle it up and keep it within the family. But as a whole, we're able to access mental health supports so many different ways. I think you'd be happy to know here at the high school now, we even have therapists that are in the building who can meet with students. So we're not just making referrals out, we're actually bringing those services in and trying hard to make, some of those barriers that people have in the way of accessing mental health services be eliminated so that we can help more students. I do think, though, we have to look at the root cause of why a lot of people start to act this way. You go from being friends one day to enemies the next. And I feel like, I mean, you call me an expert. I don't know that I am, but just in what that I've seen over the past 15 plus years, typically people are mean when they're insecure. There's something within themselves that they are insecure about, and they don't know how to see their self value or their self worth. And so they try to raise themselves higher by putting other people down. And so we as a school system work on SEL lessons starting in kindergarten, and we're implementing those every single grade all the way through high school. We have to teach people about empathy. We have to change the narrative that just because some, specifically with girls, just because someone else is successful or beautiful or, intelligent, that doesn't take away from my worth. Like, let's all celebrate each other and continue to build each other up. But that's a narrative that we have to keep working on. So I do think that, the school systems have a huge role in this. And we're trying, we're working hard. Um, are we there yet? No. But again, I think when you're insecure, it can come out as ugliness, whether it's to yourself or specifically to others. So one of the things we have to do is we have to start targeting, especially the people who are maybe being the tormentors, and try to help them evaluate where does their self-worth and their self-value come from.
Oh my
And if
gosh,
it's not there, we have to build that.
I love to hear that so many of these things are being implemented now. And I'm not surprised either, because to your point, we have grown so much as a society and understanding that we can't just keep pushing these things under the rug and moving past them. They have to be addressed. So explain to me a little bit more. You said there's a program that you guys have in place from kindergarten to high school. What is that? Because this is
So we
new to
have
me.
So we have SEL, social emotional lessons, each level. So our elementary school, they break it down by grade level. It's actually a class that the students have. Counselors come in and teach. We get information sent home in their backpacks. So I, as a parent, get to know that this week my kids worked on forgiveness, or they got to work on grit. And what does it look like to have grit and to be resilient? Empathy specifically. So, these keep circling back all the way through until high school. And then in high school, we have what used to be your encore time. We call it flex now, kind of a study hall. And we've got SEL lessons that we do on Wednesdays during that time. So we're just little reminders that you may learn it once or twice, but it's always a good idea to be reminded of simple things like the golden rule. Do you really want to treat other people like that? What if it was you? Um,
Mm.
and and sometimes it sticks, and sometimes we just keep reteaching it.
Yeah, but also having that as a lesson is really cool. We never had anything like that when I was going through. It was, you just figured it out through life and you got your feet thrown to the fire and said, figure it out. And you learned by way of other people, which I think we still have to do. That's always going to be a thing no matter what. But to have understandings of it, because assuming that everybody has the same experiences in their home and having those lessons is not true. Unfortunately, we wish it were, but that's not the case. So being able to learn that in a school that is a safe environment for that, that's really awesome to hear. Like, as someone who did go through what I went through, that it is starting really young and we're trying and we're doing different things to help that process just emotionally help people be better humans and have
Yeah.
more role models in their life.
So the other thing that if I was going to, if you don't mind,
Go for it.
me kind of going on a tangent here, what I want to tell parents, I think we mentioned earlier, if your student or your kiddo is going through bullying, please, please, please communicate with the school. Talk to us. Let us know. Don't let your kids suffer in silence. We have to know what's going on. Make a report. Um, bullying is usually persistent, consistent, it's targeted, severe. And so a lot of times it does take, we have to document, we can't just say this one time Sally was mean. That's not necessarily bullying. But once we have that documentation, that doesn't mean we can't intervene at the very first time and say, hey, how can we help Sally and make this be a better situation? We can have eyes wide open and looking again, because sometimes bullying is not obvious and we have to really be tuned in and watch to catch some of those, those little things. Girls especially, they're tricky with the gossiping and the rumors, the silent treatment. The big one for middle school and high school girls I see is that social exclusion where they're going to leave somebody out. Maybe the group message goes to everybody except for that one person.
Mm.
And that's hard. It's hard to see those things if you're not paying attention and looking for it. So please report to your school and let us know. Give us a chance to work, trust the system, because I promise there are people in the buildings who want to keep kids safe and happy, and we want them to want to be here.
Yeah,
So if
what
there's more that we can be doing, we need to be able to do everything we can for your kiddo.
I'm glad you said that because I do have a lot of parents that listen, and I know that they have a lot of their kids listen, and these messages get ingrained and then hopefully passed down, as people have their own kids and the generations continue. There's something that reminded me as you were saying this, that if there are any parents who are listening, I think the biggest message that I often took away as I look back on my high school time was that there is this huge, huge life and world out there, and the bubble that you're in high school is not everything. It feels like everything. It feels like anything that happens there. I cannot tell you how many people in my life who've been like, I've been there. I felt high school like everything was going to be over, and you feel like the world is ending when things are happening there. But not everybody finds their people in high school. Not everybody experiences their high school sweetheart in high school. Not everybody goes through these experiences. And if you're seeing them, there is just this entirely huge world that has so many more experiences waiting for you. And I so wish if there is a message that I could communicate to students, it's that because it takes the power away from what's happening in high school to be this detrimental world-ending feeling. And I never felt
Absolutely.
that.
It's so hard because that is your world, right? So when you graduate and go to college, or when you finish college and you're on your own, you get to have so much more choice of who you spend time around, right? In high school, your schedule is pre-built for you. You've got this first block class with these people, and there's not really a way around it. So you've got kind of more walls and boundaries around you that you have to figure out how to make it work. But once you have the choice of who you spend your time with, choose people wisely. Be around those who build you up and energize you, not the people who drain you. And that doesn't mean you can't be friends with someone or love them. I mean, let's be honest, there are people whose family members they have to love at a distance. It doesn't mean they don't love them, but maybe they need a little more space, right? Um, and I think that when it comes to friends, we have to always focus more on quality over quantity. I don't care how many friends you have. Really, all anybody needs is one. You need one solid go to. I've always got your back. You can tell me anything. Your secret's safe with me. You need that friend. Just one can save a life.
Yeah, and it's tough with high school too because we as much as we would love to say that the stereotypes aren't there, they are there. Everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants to be popular. Everybody wants that power in high school. It's the dream. You see it in movies, you see it in TV shows. You want to be that person. And I think there's something so beautiful as I look back on it. And I wish that I realized as a person going through those experiences that there was so much more to life outside of that bubble. And understanding that even if you didn't have a bad experience, maybe you had a great experience in high school. And then you went off and you did your own thing and you made these incredible friends in your adult world. Then you're like, oh, well, I have my high school friends. You can have both. Like it's just this understanding that that is just a season of your life. And this world is a season. It's not the whole story. It's not the whole book that you're gonna write. And I wish that was a message that I understood better. I'm sure I heard it and I'm sure people tried to convince me of that. But when you're in it and when you're in the thick of that and understanding and going through that, there's no chance that you're going to see it for what it is.
You can't comprehend what you haven't experienced yet.
There's beauty in history and there's a lot of knowledge when you've experienced life. Now, I
Yeah.
do want to, because I do call you an expert. I wanted to touch on a little bit more. You shared a little bit at the beginning, but this experience that you had with me transitioned you to becoming a counselor. You went from math teacher to a
Mhm.
counselor. What has that been like for you? And are you glad that that transition ended up happening?
And so I love my job. I will be the first one to tell you I'm a huge nerd. Math is my jam. Like I'll still write my budget with paper and pencil just to get that little sensation of of math because I'm just that person. I never had a chance. I come from a family of educators. My dad's a math teacher, my sister's a math teacher, so I'm just kind of one of those sick people. But
No,
I love it.
no. Very
Um,
intelligent, I think is the word we're looking for.
well, you had talked in a previous episode about which side of the brain, really works well for you. I've always been that analytical thinker, so I like rules. Um, Switching over to counseling has been a very rewarding experience. Not everybody had a similar experience to you, but I've had a lot of students who shared with me, some really personal, important things in their life. And at the time as a teacher, I would do what I could, kind of put a band-aid on it in the short term until I could get them down to a counselor and then refer them over and kind of hand them off to those experts and say, okay, here's what I've brought you, work your magic. And for me, I wanted to know how the story ended. I needed to know that they got the resources that they needed. I needed to know that a report was filed if it needed to be. We do a little bit that as a teacher, but I wanted to see the family resolution come to pass. I just needed more. And so based on the experiences that I'd had with students being willing to talk with me and share, I felt like this was something I needed to pursue further. So um, yes, my experience working, I joke, with cheer helped me start that path, but really it was an absolute blessing. And each day we get to start something fresh. And, I might have a to-do list of what I'd like to get done in a day, but you never know what's going to walk in your door. So we do a lot of things like provide breakfast or snacks. We do a lot of meeting basic needs. Even in the high school that we're in, I think a lot of people view it as a very affluent school. We still have all kinds of diversity. We still have students living in poverty. We have students whose basic needs aren't being met. So we get to fill those gaps first. And once those basic needs are met, then we have the ability to dig a little deeper and work on some of maybe their emotional needs, and then we get to the academics because you have to have those basic needs met. You have to be in a ready to learn state before the education piece can really sink in and stick. So it's a privilege to be a school counselor.
You're so good at it. You were born to be in the educational field. There's no doubt about that. I'm very well aware of that. I think anybody who's ever been in your presence, worked with you, can attest to that. And as someone who is one of your students, I absolutely can. So you can see it just in you talking about it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And you mentioned too how you never know what's going to walk in, something that I am a huge advocate for because in my experiences of this time in high school for me, I was severely depressed and unfortunately I had a lot of thoughts of suicide. This was my first experience with having a therapist, which unfortunately also for me was not the best therapy experience because again there wasn't a whole plethora of therapists back then. Now you have so many options and people to fit specific needs. This was more like there was five and this seemed to be the best and nobody knew. We were just kind of, she needs help, what do we do?
Mhm.
And that was something that was very present in my life and continued throughout the course of my life. But I want to talk about this because this is a topic that people do not like to talk about. It is scary. It is uncomfortable. The idea that people have thoughts of suicide is like, turn it off. I don't want to hear about this. But as a counselor, I imagine that this is a topic for you and it's experienced in schools often. And I want to be able to help parents help their kids if they are experiencing this. So, as a counselor, maybe you can provide some further insight into that.
Sure. Um, yes, we hope that in all situations, the student's really comfortable in talking to their family and their parents. But the truth is, oftentimes students feel the responsibility to kind of shield their parents from the pain that they're feeling because they're worried it's going to upset their parents, right? So having somebody in the building that they can talk to, whether it's a teacher, a coach, a counselor, having somebody that they feel safe with and is willing to have these direct conversations with is so important. And then we can help the students facilitate that conversation with parents. Or if the student doesn't feel like they can do it, we can call and do it for them. But I guess what I would tell people is don't be afraid to use the word suicide. I think a lot of people, like you said, are afraid of it. The word itself and asking the question, are you feeling suicidal, is not going to plant any kind of an idea in somebody's head if it wasn't already there. What you're doing is you're saying, I am willing to ask a very difficult question and I will hold space for you no matter what the answer is to that. So don't be afraid of the word, ask the question. And then from there, we're trained, teachers and counselors alike, anybody within the building, to go through and have a series of questions to decide whether or not this is something, we need to act on immediately, or is it something that we can process a little bit more? We do get parents involved and make sure that they're comfortable with us having these conversations, but we question and then we persuade that person to get some help, whatever that looks like, whether it's from an outside therapist, whether it's to go immediately to your community crisis center where they have 24/7 help available to do an evaluation and potentially find placement, um, and make those referrals as needed. Um, to go a little bit further, if somebody were to say yes and we want to decide severity, that's where people who are very trained will start asking questions that are maybe more like, do you have a plan? How often do you think about this? If you do have a plan, do you have access to what it is that you would utilize? But first things first, parents, if you're worried about this, you need to take action and get help right away. And then don't think just because you got help and the next morning we wake up and everybody seems fine that it's over. It's going to be an ongoing process. So take precautions within your home. Lock up your pills. Make sure guns are put away, locked away. If you have anybody in your family who self-harms, you might have to go a step further and put away some of the sharp objects. But there are steps that we take, um, as schools and as parents, to just make the people around us know we care about them and to keep them safe.
Those are some
Sorry,
really,
that was a
no,
lot, wasn't
no,
it?
no, 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 no. It was important, is what it was. And I wanted to give the space for that to be important because it is a hard topic, but it's one that I don't think people realize how prevalent it is amongst so many people. And I also want you, if you feel comfortable, to share. For me, when I was experiencing that, I had so much shame associated with it. I was really disappointed in myself that I felt that way, that I had these experiences and I couldn't just, get it together and be okay. What are some things that maybe you would tell parents if their kid is experiencing this, like how they can support their kid to not feel that shame? Because I think the reason why it's so difficult to talk about is because you feel horrible that you feel this way on top of already feeling what you feel.
Sure.
So maybe if there's tools for parents to open that door a little bit further, that maybe it doesn't feel so heavy.
Sure. Um, so a couple of things that I would recommend. It's not easy and your teen won't love it, uh, but get them away from their cell phone for a while. There are a lot of great tools that are available, and I know the world has changed, but the amount of issues that I see stem from having a cell phone in their hand 24/7 all the time is so overwhelming. The constant information, the constant notifications, the inability to just be present and in the moment, the FOMO, right?
Yeah.
There's so much that's tied to that. If we can just distance, put it away. Don't let them have it in their room at night. Have them charge their phones upstairs, away from their bedroom, and just let that become a pattern. Give them some distance and some freedom from that cell phone. They may not see it as freedom, but it is. Um, Exercise. And it doesn't have to be intense, go for a walk with your kid and just talk with them. Um, Make that a habit if you can. Be preemptive. So if you're listening to this and thinking, "Oh, I'm so grateful my child doesn't have this going on," be proactive and keep those lines of communication open. Build those healthy habits now that can help prevent getting to this point then. Um, and I think you just over communicate, if there's such a thing, to your child that you love them no matter what. There's nothing ever that they could say or do that would stop that love, and they can tell you anything. That doesn't mean that there won't be consequences for your actions, but it just ensures that unconditional love and positive regard that I'm going to help you through anything, and there's nothing that we can't get through together.
Those are really good pieces of advice, and very thankful that I had parents who were that for me. That's why, truthfully, I made it through a lot of what I made it through was not only the support system that I had in you, and I had a few people who rallied around me at school, but my family who just allowed me to go through what I was going through and they were my biggest cheerleaders and being like, we're here, whatever you need. And that line of communication was always open, even when it was really hard and even when I did feel that shame. So I'm glad you said all of that, but also the tip about the cell phone, I cannot imagine the experiences that teens are having with cell phones now. This is coming from somebody who I have an entire job based around social media. I see everything. I know what's happening on those platforms. And I know as a fully grown, healthy adult, there are days I want to throw my phone in an ocean and run away from everything. And I have that capability because I'm an adult, because I am in my own life and I can see things for what they are. But as a teenager, having the access to the things that I have access to and the things that I see every day, I cannot imagine what that has added onto them. This is like a little bit off topic, but I do, from your experience in the educational field, what has been like that transition of not only social media, but cell phones, everybody has one, and how it's kind of played a role in these experiences for kids.
There's so much research out there, and you can see the trends are coming where schools are starting to pull back. For the longest time, it was, oh, well, let them have it. It'll be okay. And now we're seeing the attention span, I mean, is gone. We have students who I'm guilty of it. I say that as if it's not me. I can't tell you how many times I grab my phone and touch it just to see if something new has come up, right? Like, I'd hate to see how many times a day I
The
actually touch my screen.
the notification high that you get. Hmm.
Yes. And so our students are trying to navigate that, but they're also supposed to be learning the quadratic equation. Like, what would they rather learn? I know what I'd rather learn, but most people like the it's
Yeah,
a
you're
no-brainer.
unique.
And so I know. We have gotten to where we have students maybe put their phones in pockets up at the front of the class, and that way they leave it there during class, pick it up on their way out. But schools all over are really starting to go back, and they're seeing how much it is affecting mental health, self-esteem, attention span. Um, Parents, please, please don't let your kids think that it's their cell phone. It's your cell phone that you're letting them use, and you have control over it, and you should be all up in it. Like, I don't mean to give parenting advice, but I will, just from the sake of, please, there are so many apps out there. There's so much creation that can take place. Even just knowing that mom and dad might look at what I have going on in my phone can be enough to prevent some of those ugly things from outside the world coming inside your house.
Yeah. And it's hard because we are living in a space where, kids want their parents to be their best friend. And I can attest that my parents are my best friends now. But when I was in high school and I was a kid, no, 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 no. We got in fights regularly because I knew that I was not in control, and I was fighting against that. And I'm better for that. Of course, you're in that experience and you don't feel that way. Again, everything that's happening then is everything is against you, the world is against you, and there's nothing outside of that bubble. But
Mm.
it is important. And I can attest to what you're saying, but not just that, you are also a mom too. You're not just a teacher, an educator, a counselor. You're also a mom. You're having these experiences in real time.
My kids get a lot of early lectures, I think. So my sixth grader does not have a cell phone. He's probably one of the only ones. I just recently gave him a watch that he can text, I think, four people and call me, and that's it. Because I get it, like you want to be able to reach your kids, but there's just a whole world out there, and it's not all safe and it's not all pretty. And the second you put that phone in a kid's hand and you don't have any kind of parameters, locks, blocks, protection, you're opening them up to all of the scariest things that are out there. And if you think people aren't preying on our young, our vulnerable, our low self-esteem, they know what they're doing. And it happens not just to kids, but to adults. And we have to protect our kids. And that cell phone is like opening the door to so many of the hurtful and hateful things that are in this world. So just, it's not the devil, but I mean, protect them from it anyway.
It's just one of those things that less is more as they're growing up. Yeah.
Just
And
control, be involved.
yeah, that's really important. And it's also tough. I am sure as a mom and someone who does have a full-time job can attest that you have 80 million plates you're juggling at any given time and having to also balance and control a thing that's in their hands 24/7 is also really hard. So there's grace in that too, but it's also, what's the balance at the end of the day? What's the most important level here? And that is that you don't want them to experience these things. And I do think too, had I gone through, we had phones, but they were the flip phones and they weren't the smartphones. We didn't have a lot of the social media, MySpace maybe, and gosh, even just people choosing their top 8 friends was dramatic, and we hated people for that experience. Like that was not well for us, and that was just top 8 friends. So I cannot imagine, especially seeing the way that people talk to each other online. Have you experienced a lot of things that have translated, like maybe they started online and then they come into the school, or they start in school and then they translate online? Is that still happening in a different way? Like, is cyberbullying still pretty out there and
Oh,
happening?
absolutely. Yeah, it happens. And it, there aren't lines anymore. I mean, there's very little out there and in here, right? Like it's all one. So yeah, when that is happening online and it's, you think about a girl who doesn't understand why so and so said something bad about them or they're not talking to me. That's what they're thinking about. They're processing that like, well, did I say something wrong? Why are they mad at me? They're not able to focus on other things. Um, and that's really hard for anybody to navigate, but especially we're talking about teenagers and they've got all these emotions and hormones and outside social factors. They're just learning time management. It might be the first time in their life they have real stress. Um, you know, Anxiety is huge. I see so many students who struggle with anxiety right now. Um,
Mm,
and I'd like to see the narrative on that change a little bit. Some anxiety is actually very healthy, right? Anxiety in and of itself is not necessarily bad. It's when it becomes uncontrolled, you aren't able to cope with it, you know. But if you have some anxiety because you have a test tomorrow, that's okay. That's your brain telling you, hey, remember, we need to study for that. But when it becomes so crippling that you miss 3 days of school in a row because you're so nervous about going for whatever reason, whether it's social or academic or whatever, you let your kids stay home because they're struggling. Well, now they're just even more behind and it compounds. And that anxiety isn't getting any better, it's getting worse, and it makes it more and more difficult to return. So um, I think I think as hard as it is, um, we have to get our kids in school. And that was a huge thing post COVID, right? Like a lot of
mm.
people returning just back into everyday life was difficult. We saw a lot of that in students and trying to get back into school regularly. So if you have a kiddo who's maybe struggling with that high anxiety and avoiding school, um, call us, let us talk with you. Let's make a plan and try to figure out how to get them back here, so that we can put some different supports in place and make it easier. Because the only thing that happens when you continue to miss and get further and further behind is that anxiety just shoots up higher and higher.
I like that you said too that some of that anxiety is good because we have, in a great way, we have learned so much and we're so aware of so many things that we do forget that there are levels of that that are helpful to us as human beings. Because when you
Yeah.
say the word anxiety, it's, oh gosh, you have that. I'm so sorry. That's a whole experience. But it is still a natural human experience to have an anxiety about a situation. And because it's also very closely assimilated to excitement and life happening to you because you're getting all these nervousness around that anxiety. So I really love that you mentioned those two kind of comparisons.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else, Mrs. Manning? Gosh, I am just so glad that you came on and shared so many things, not only just the experiences that we've had mutually together, but you and I also have talked several times about both of our desire to want to help kids. Me in the space of not having them experience the things that I experienced and having tools to deal with that, and you wanting to just help all the kids be able to be kids and live in the school system and feel safe. So is there any other topics or things that like you want to talk about, or this is your moment. You can share whatever you want to say.
Well, I think, we talked quite a bit on a lot of topics, but when we touched on suicide, and I know that that's a hot topic for a lot of people, I just want to make sure everybody knows about 988. Okay, so that's your hotline for calling for mental health. 911 is emergency situations, and 988 is your go-to. If you have somebody who's struggling, if you're not sure, you just need some additional resources, that's an easy, quick phone call and get some help. So I want to make sure people are aware of that. Um, I want to thank you. Um, this is right here on my desk. Hold on. Um, this beautiful lady right here has been such an amazing success story. And um, I know you had to go through it to get where you are today. And it was painful, and it was ugly, and it was hard, but there are few things that make me happier than seeing how successful you are, and just being kind of that model that shows us, yes, there's more to life outside high school. I can overcome this. I can do hard things. You've got this thick skin. And look where you are now. I mean, like, how cool is this?
It is. It's
We're
very
all so
cool.
proud of you. We're
Like,
so proud
I
of you.
cannot
And I
believe
just
you
want to,
still have that on your desk. Also, the fact that you have my senior picture just sitting on your desk still.
no, right here. Absolutely. Yes.
You are too kind to say all of that, genuinely, but it has. As they say, I was forged in fire, and I am grateful for that now, and I can speak to those experiences now. I still wish nobody ever has to experience them, despite how it has made me who I am. I still hope that not. I think we can do better. I think we can be better, and I think there's a world that these things don't have to exist and people can still be forged in fire without having those experiences. And that's why I appreciate people like you, not just as a human being, but also as an educator, because you're in a field that's directly impacting them from the ground up. And it's not an easy job. You guys, you get love sometimes or once a year in teacher appreciation, but you should get it all the time. What you guys do, and in that system, I have two sisters who are in the educational field, and what you guys do matters, and how you guys interact on a day-to-day basis with people. You are changing lives, and you changed mine in so many more ways that I know, not even just you recalling things. I know that I even warned you ahead of the thing. I said I'm probably going to forget a lot of things. There's probably stuff that I blocked out. And but there's one thing that I do know and I'm so certain of is that you were always a safe space for me, and you were someone that I still to this day cannot speak highly enough of. So what you do matters, what you continue to do matters, and how you've taken that and run with that is an incredible thing for me to see and experience. And I'm just glad I exist at the same time as you do.
I cannot thank you enough for your kind words. It's a battlefield some days, but it is so worth it. And having moments like this is just so affirming and reminds us why we get up and come to work every day because you never know when you're going to have an opportunity to make a big difference. So I'm just so proud of you, and I'm so grateful that you let me come on and chat with you a little bit.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much. You're the best.